All right, we're still looking at what's in your hands. Yesterday we talked about giving from obedience. Today we're going to look at giving from your abundance. Yeah, some of us are really blessed. And what does that look like, giving from our abundance? Well, let's look in the Old Testament at Boaz. And what do we know about Boaz? He was a very wealthy man. He had abundance. And he had huge fields, and when he would send his harvesters out, he would tell them, look, don't take up all of it. Go ahead and just leave some of the wheat for the poor people. So he was giving from his abundance. Now what happened from that? He got a good name. He blessed a whole bunch of people, and directly from that, he ended up getting blessed with an amazing wife, Ruth. All right, we'll come back. In 2 Kings, we see the story about the jars of oil. Okay, the woman who owed a debt, and she was so desperate, and the prophet told her, go and collect jars from your neighbors. Well, what did her neighbors have an abundance of? Jars. They may not have had an abundance of money to help her, but they had so many extra jars in their house. So you know what? Sometimes what you're giving your abundance, it's not that you're giving an abundance of money, or maybe it's not even food, but something is in your hands. Okay, so they all gave some of their jars, and what happened? He just said, keep pouring and filling the oil, and the oil kept running until she ran out of jars. And she was able to pay the debt and had all the oil and everything she needed as she went forward. Okay, so those neighbors, they had jars. All right, Boaz, he had fields. Let's keep going. Lydia, in the New Testament, she was a seamstress, a tailor. She had cloth. Well, from her cloth and that abundance, she used that abundance to host men of God. The disciples and different other men of God, as they traveled through, she would host them in her home. She would provide food for them. So she used her abundance not to just hoard it up for herself, but to host the men of God. All right, on that same path, probably the most famous person that we think of is the Shunammite woman. All right, she said, here's this man of God. He keeps coming this way every time he comes through town. Let's build a room for him. All right, so they had a nice house. They were comfortable, they had everything they needed, and they built an extra room for the man of God. And it's the abundance of what they had that they made for him. And so he goes back and forth, and he's like, what can I do for you? She's like, we're so blessed, we don't need anything. My people are all here, we have a nice place to live, all our needs are met, don't need anything. And his servant says, Master, she doesn't have a son. And he prays for her, and God blesses her with a son. And then what happens later? We find out, the son dies, and she goes back to Elisha, and Elisha says, okay, this is not going to work. And Elisha goes, and he lays on him, and he puts his mouth on his mouth, and his eyeballs on his eyeballs. And you know what? God raised that boy from the dead. So in each of these situations, we see people who were blessed already. They were so prosperous, but they didn't keep it for themselves. They just gave it and gave it. What do I see? I see people who use their abundance as an opportunity to give into something greater. Boaz gave into his spot in the lineage of Jesus. Okay, and we see the people who gave their jars, they got to become part of a miracle. And the lady who gave a room, she was blessed with a son. Okay, we even, again, Joseph, he gave his tomb for Jesus. These are all people who are part of a great story of giving and blessing and God's faithfulness. So going the second mile. When you walk around your house today, look and ask God, God, what do I have in my hand that is abundance? How can I give from that abundance? What have you blessed me in that I can give extra above and beyond into someone else's miracle?